turn this on. That's good. Okay. So I'm focused on you. Anybody have any comments, questions on, let's say anything through the course today, everything we've discussed up until today that you want to build on, such as the points you made. I mean, several oral points we had about top down, bottom up, and how to capture some of this. Would be great to continue. We have a this is notes elsewhere. It's not there. Okay. Well, if you were considering a draft or a paper as a possibility, as it says, it's good to try to give us some ideas, a page and a half, 2 pages, something like that, so we can talk about it. That is, it's good to have it in the back of your head, and maybe you're not going to do a paper, but if you might, why not, jot down some here. So here's something I might do a paper on, and let's talk about it, because you folks, two of you folks especially, you have many years of experience which are interesting and valuable, which could inform the course. Well, certainly, I mean, all of you. So that's our general point. Most people can, and that's fine. Just for the record, just to take the 2 exams and get an A grade, and that's fine. If you're doing something already anyway, you're doing a BA thesis, you're doing something else, and that's something you'd like to build on, and you've already done that. If you've done that before, if you've done an earlier MA, and there are ways of adapting and thinking about that in this new context. For instance, how much are the adding the arts or comparing Korea to China? What would that? How could that give us more insights? For instance. Okay, so you hear my point about abstracts are an option. Yeah, question, go ahead.
Yeah, what is the question like in the exam? Like,
just a little louder.
What would be the questions like for
the exam will have 2 kinds of questions. Short identifications, like, the rise of the arts, or Tuckville, well, whatever, Tuckville, I won't add anymore, but something you can briefly write about, and then, I think the number of points are 30 for the IDs, the identification essays. It's not called essays, ID commentaries that you can do. The second part is an essay. So if the first one we may give you 6 IDs and you can choose 3. So you comment on those 3. How do those fit into the course? The second part is an essay, we may give you 2 topics. And if you write 1 essay on 1 topic, that should count about 70%. So work on thinking about quickly, because you'll only have, 80 minutes, and how to, so if you've thought about these issues now, and we discuss them now, make a short outline to yourself. I'm going to make 3 points, boom, 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 and then there you go. Okay, so I'd say a quick addition is practice yourself, maybe this week, maybe twice. Take 80 minutes and say, what can I say? Because you have lots in your heads. Go ahead and time yourself and take for this. Say, I will give myself the first time amount for the IDs, and then most of the time for the essay, and then write that actively, clearly, and try to write. And so those of you who, I guess 3 of you will also get, I think it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 20 minutes more, because you're a non-English, non-native English speaking person. So you'll have a little more time than if you have if you don't have that background. So, if you show some knowledge of what is in some of the area of the course from the readings, but also add something a little bit or a new twist onto them, which, as we have done in these sessions, that would be great to add a little. Think about, for instance, adding the idea, not only the rise of the arts, but adding, for example, the term beauty in China in the world, and the implications of that phrase or that label, which as we've elaborated in the last few sessions, and then the implications of that internationally. So even if you knew about it before from China, you think about in the world part. I think you hear the paragraph that could touch on that. Then the meanings of beauty. Okay, so those could be things which you could. Yeah, question.
Just to clarify, the midterm would be next week, or is it?
I think so. Yes, I think that's week 5, isn't it? This is week 4.
Yeah.
Yes, week 5. Yeah. Well, we will also have. Well, we'll have. Maybe, I don't know if I've written this up. This may not have been sent to you. If it's not clear, we have 2 sessions really in one day. So we're going to do a Zoom session for the first half, which will be a review for the exam next week. The second half of that period, the second 80 minutes, is for the exam itself. But you can write it at home in the library, not in this room. So don't come here. Stay home, stay at the library, be where you're comfortable. You can use your books, you can use your notes as reference, but you can't copy and paste. So if you copy, if you have anything, if you have a quotation, say Wikipedia says, quote, that's fine. But you must write only your own original words for what is in the exam. Any other questions? So we'll send that out. We'll send that out with a little bit more. There's an updated version of the syllabus which says this, which I think because Annalisa has been ill, so that may not have gone out to you yet. Question?
So I just want to clarify. So the form of the exam is like you give me the document about the questions, and after we answer it, we submit it by email?
Yes.
Or,
She will send it out at the exact time, and then you send it back to a copy by email to her and to me. And both of our emails are at the top of the syllabus. You can just copy and for the two emails and send it back to the two of us. And it will be stamped by your email, and it will show the email when it is sent and it's received by the two of us. Okay.
Professor, if I want to write a paper, I mean, can I send you my abstract like the day after yesterday, because I have
Yes.
now
Yes.
a lot of.
No, that's fine. I mean, this is the first call for an abstract. It's fine to revise it in 2 weeks. Say I have some new good ideas. Please consider these new ideas along with, that is, try not to totally change your topic. You waste more time if you change topics, but choose a topic and then stick with that and elaborate just for this one quarter. That's fine. But for instance, if you work on your topic for 2 weeks, then you have some new ideas. You can say, well, how about? I mean, you can ask yourself. But if you want to discuss them, maybe if it's a more general thing, maybe for the whole class we can talk about it. Or send us a little note and say, what if I tentatively do this, and this, but should I also try to do that? And I would say one thing which I will often say is, be less ambitious. The normal thing is students try to do too much. I'd say normally keep it more narrowly focused. If it's only for this class paper, don't try to do an MA or a PhD. You know, keep the topic for later on for something bigger. A course paper only is short and simple. Even if you've got lots more in your head, but you can't do a PhD in a couple of weeks. Thesis. Okay, anything else on the exam?
If I am not doing a paper, should I also, how to say, if I only want to write a paper, I will not to take this midterm exam, right?
Yeah, that is possible. We still recommend always to take both exams, just because the danger for you, and that is, why are you taking this course? If you're here rather than in China, you learn more if you read more generally. If you only do one topic and you ignore all the rest, you'll have less in your head.
Yeah.
So that is, if you turn in more work, you will only do a better grade. So if you do the paper, even if you do a 0 or say a poor job in the midterm, but you do a strong job, a pretty good job for the final, and you do the paper, that will only raise your grade. We don't just take an average. You know, if you get an A, and and a B, well, if you get 2 A's and a B, you'll still get an A. That's the idea, is to show us more. So even though clearly you could do a longer paper, but I would say given your interest, and I've heard a little bit about for the 4 of you, I've heard less about you, but the other 3 I've talked to more. I would say use the readings as well as an integral part of the course. We'll balance, will complement and extend what's already in your background. This is a suggestion. Any more? Okay. Let's take a little more general on the. I want to show a little bit more in Paris in a video, but I want to make the point. A big point of this course is international comparisons. So we're focusing especially on the U.S., France, and China. And a good chunk of that, which we can learn more about, is comparing the three. You know, where and why and how does the context of China changing? How is beauty in China different from beauty in France and different from beauty in the U.S.? Or maybe that's even that's yeah, okay, that's good. Let me move my back so. I have well, okay. Good, thank you. Or maybe more narrow. What does localism? What are the differences in localism mean between those three countries, or within, or the combination of localism with neighborliness? How can neighborliness combine with? That is, how does the meaning of neighbor? Well, I don't know. Keep it simpler. I'm trying to make a point that, for instance, rural in China has many different big implications than rural in France because of citizenship. You know, you only get certain access to government services and the like if you use your you can get them locally, whereas you are not if you are not a citizen of Beijing, you officially, you know, are a resident of a rural area. That reinforces the likelihood of people maintaining with children, with grandchildren, with parents who take care of children, etc. There's a localism that transforms the importance of maintaining that local base in ways that are different from the U.S. say. Or here's maybe this is another one which is maybe better. Those people who have generations of connection with that local area is one thing. The second is you may live in Beijing, but you don't like the pollution. So you want to have a little house where it's clean air near the mountains. And so it's a second home, and it's for weekends, other things. And so it's in a sense, it's an amenity, it's a leisure time, it's a secondary home. It maybe it's sublet to other people for partial use or something like that. That is, this is happening around the whole world, and including in China. So we did a session called Cultural Tourism at Wuhan, a conference about a year ago, and we have good videos of these people who look as if they've been training in health clubs, you know, in Beijing, but they're now in the countryside, and they look very urban. Okay, that's different from people who've been there for 3 generations. Even if when they go to Beijing, and maybe he's a young man who works in Beijing, but his heart and his background is more rural. So rural culture and rural residence has 2 or 3 different meanings. 3 different cultural meanings. That is, traditional rural, rural leisure home, and third, access to government services. And so where and how these transform the meaning of rural, especially the new, well, I wouldn't say it's not totally new. There have some people, especially the French. The French have had leisure homes in the countryside, especially the elites, for generations. That is the king and the people in the court would leave Paris and Versailles, and they would go to the chateaus of the Loire Valley. There are maybe 200 fantastic castles where they live, where they visit, but they're only there for a certain part, part of the year now. Although, okay, so I'm simply making adding the idea of a leisure consumption defined secondary residence is not normal rural. Okay. Let me just say a few words on. Well, let me go back and forth. We've got. See. Okay, well here's one point I want to introduce, which I didn't have time to make orally. Has anybody looked at the book by Habermas on the public sphere and the cafes? I want to talk about what are one or two big points that you should take away in your heads and remember about Habermas. Okay, he's part of he was the Frankfurt School. He added some important new ideas that connect with the title about these points about consumption. And they show the importance of cross-national comparison. Okay. Doesn't sound as if anybody is jumping in it. Okay, let me make that simple point. Take Karl Marx. As he was starting to write for newspapers in Germany, he wrote some revolutionary things. And the people in Germany basically said, get out of Germany. You can't do that. This is politically bad. So he left and he went to Paris. He was in Paris for a couple of years and he did the same thing. And the people, the French then said, get out of France. We don't want you to be, you're too dangerous. So he went to London and he wrote most of his revolutionary Marxist work in London. Okay. What are the implications which Habermas elaborates? This is one case. He and others in the three countries have different ways of connecting to the people around them, and one place is in a coffee house or a cafe. So coffee house is the English term because it's a house, because it's indoors, because it rains and it's cold in England. In France, ideally, say in southern France, it's warmer and the cafes are outdoors and you have tables in the sun. Okay. What's the difference between people do in cafes in France and Germany versus the coffee houses in England? It's not just the rain, although there's rain in all of these. I mean, they have 6 months of drizzle and so forth through the winter. But they're very different because of the political context, which is more authoritarian and visible And if you write something which is not acceptable, it gets seized. You may go to jail. And for instance, in the 19th century, Marx was in the middle of the 19th century. In most of the 19th century in France, you could not speak to a banquet or you could not create an organization, like certainly a revolutionary organization, but say a club. You want to have a sports club, have a soccer club or a bicycle club or a mountain climbing kind of club. No, that's illegal in France. In the 20th century, that was possible in France, but in the 19th century, it was not. Why not? It might become political. It might become challenging the government, and therefore nothing was permitted. This was strong control, which was similar for the king, for the kings, and it was under Napoleon, under etc. So where did new ideas in books, in tracts, in newspapers, journals could circulate it? How could new things in England, they could be discussed and circulate. People could publish a 20-page booklet and bring it there and pass it out and say, "Here, my friends, I have a new idea." Hobbes said what they're doing on the continent. They say, you must have a Leviathan. You must have a strong state, the king, and it must control, because if they're not controlling everybody, we will have anarchy. And this is the theory of Hobbes. So Hobbes passed this out. So Hobbes passes this out one week. Another week, a few years later, John Locke writes another tract, and Locke says, no, Hobbes' tract is wrong. We don't need a Leviathan, the king. We could have individual citizens. And we could have individual citizens who say, in order to overcome anarchy, we can create contracts. So both of them are contract theorists. But Locke's contract theorist is horizontal among individuals. And then the ideal example is maybe there's a parliament or a city council. And if the people in the city council or the parliament agree among other members of that city council or the parliament, then they decide, for instance, will they continue this war or that war or not, or a combination of wars, or maybe they will stop both wars. Those kinds of things get, or then will we provide more services but also raise more taxes, or will we reduce taxes? I mean, those things which could be contractually discussed in a legislature, or in France, not. That is, the big point of Habermas is, for much of the, let's say, France and Germany definitely, but not exceptions to Habermas's generalization are Switzerland and the Dutch and the Netherlands. They had what makes those two countries different? If you read Max Weber. Hint, if you know about Max Weber. Religion, second hand. You're shaking your head. What's the answer?
No, just the idea of religion makes sense.
Okay. But okay, in France, the church, like the state, have said within the church, here's a young priest. This young priest is saying, why don't we do things differently, and why don't we let the citizens talk about what we should do about in the church, and how should we do that? Should the church do different things? Should we build a new church together or not? And so can the citizens say, let's build the church together? No. The church was the Roman Catholic Church was a hierarchy. And the big decisions were made at the Vatican in Rome, not in a small town in France or Italy or Spain or whatever. Okay. So when there was a young guy named Calvin, and Calvin said, we want to do things differently and have some of the citizens involved. And people are, you can't say that in France. You can't say that and be a Roman Catholic. He was a priest, you know. He's a young priest. You can't do that. So what did he do? He went to Switzerland, and the Swiss said, oh, okay, you can do. You know, Switzerland is not a nation. Switzerland is lots of little villages scattered in there, and they're in the mountains. So the mountains segregated and kept them distinct, and they had local autonomy. And the people who were, you know, they were also pretty autonomous and separate. They didn't have a strong state, and so that this young priest, we don't care about that. Yes, okay, we can have. And so he had more followers and more people, and then they now call it Calvinism. Okay, so Calvinism was the religion one major religion in Switzerland and in the Netherlands. But in contrast to France and Germany, where you had strong, that is from 1870 on, we did a strong national state. Before that, Prussia, the Prussian bureaucracy was strong central government control. So the general point of Habermas is that most of the European continent had tight controls from above. England was the exception. For historical reasons. England had been a coalition. It was a coalition because you had a combination of the traditional Anglos who'd been there. Then you had the people who came from Saxony, who were German, and then other people who came from Normandy, who were Norman, who spoke French. All these three then had high status, low status peasants, and so forth. And so England would, after Norman the Conqueror, 1066, he officially conquered England, but they preserved the idea of what in the U.S. or nationally that people call federalism. We have more local autonomy at local regions. And how does this affect coffee houses? In the coffee houses, you can talk about lots of things which are impossible in France or Germany. Okay, so what did they do? They could talk about political liberties such as, I'm mentioning John Locke and Hobbes, but also Adam Smith in Scotland talking about the market, the wealth of nations, these kinds of ideas. Or then people said, maybe they hadn't read Adam Smith, but they may, in the coffee houses, they make bets with each other. Say, you have a ship, or some people who they have a ship coming from China with this nice Chinese pottery and Chinese attractive things. I'll give you a bet, 10 pounds that your ship is not going to get here. And the other people said, shall we make a bet? So you can make it. If they started with a game like this or a bet, and then what did that become? The London stock market grew out of this kind of thing. So institutions changed and were created. So the stock market in Amsterdam and London really became very important for exchanging prices for ships and what could become internationally exchanged in those terms that was not permitted in France or England, in France or Germany. Okay, so what Habermas focuses on is the image, so the two-sentence point for to take away. A couple more we're going to elaborate, but the cafes in France said you can be beautiful, like all of China. You can have a nice dress. You can have a nice umbrella, but you can't talk about politics. In England, because they're talking about politics, they're making money, they're building factories, but they don't think about beauty as much. They're not as beautiful. So what does beauty then led to? The arts. So if you look at are there any English Impressionist paintings? A few, but they're mainly French. So the arts, this is a corollary. So the English built these institutions involving money and politics, but the French built beauty. They paid more attention to the arts and aesthetics for centuries. So with why do they have so many castles in the chateaux of the Loire Valley? Because the king had several girlfriends, each beautiful, and they each wanted a new castle. And they got a new castle, and then they had a battle, and that girlfriend left. Then they have a new, so that is their relationship. Leonardo da Vinci, so Francis I said, we want to have more beauty in France. Those damn Italians, they've got those painters. I want the best. Leonardo da Vinci, please come to France. And he came to France. He became the official artist of the king. So they gave him a new castle for himself. But he also brought the Mona Lisa, which was in the Louvre. And that sensitivity to the arts continued with French, the French thereafter. But okay, so that's our big. So one more term which Habermas uses, I'll bring in, which he calls the public sphere, the idea of the public. The public in this example is the other people in the coffee house. That is not just one person, maybe 5 people, maybe 20 people, but they also maybe, if you leave the tracts, you print 50 copies or 100 copies of this little booklet. Maybe you leave them in the coffee house, and the other people may pass them around to their friends. And it's not publication on the American Political Science Review, but it was pretty good. That is, it started the conception not just of one individual or of 2 people talking privately. It was the public is a participant. And the public is not quite citizens with lots of citizen rights, but several hundred years ago, it was the beginnings of what became citizenship in the broader general public. And so okay, I'll leave it there for the moment. All right, two questions in the syllabus. How conceptualize gender? Please, how does coffee today get used in Asia? What were the traditions? So are there 2 counterparts to the English and the French in Asia? Korea, China, Japan. Did they have something, say, in the 18th century, 17th century? In Shanghai? Did they have coffee? I mean, the Turks had. I think the Turks may have discovered coffee, whatever. you know, maybe 1600 or something. In 1700, what, did they drink any, or did they, how about tea? Yes.
I don't know, like, but for my impression, I saw the coffee in China is more like, you know, it's rather than just a normal place for you to just get a drink, but it's also have some cultural meaning, like you can go in there to prove you are belong to a high social status. I think it's maybe 10 years before I heard something about that. And these people, they make white collars, they have well salaries and well dresses, and they just go there to talk something about business and such things.
Okay, no, but wait, that's an important point. They did talk about business.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because I think most people going there in Shanghai, they are in the job related to the business.
Okay. So you're getting the beginnings of some big important points. That is, it's both the English and the French are combined in the, but you're starting to, what's your name?
I'm Mark.
Mark, okay, Mark, you're going to elaborate?
Yeah, I think I'm not an expert, I don't know much, but from my perspective, at least on like the Japanese tradition of tea, it was always sort of like it was organized more as like unit on unit, but it could be power broker on power broker or family on family. And so there was like a lot more of like a ceremonial component to tea as this sort of thing that brings people together to do negotiating over business or over politics or power is really the thing there that was at play through a ceremony,
Okay.
mediated by the drink.
Okay. Yes. Okay. This is the big point. That is, you have some of the elegance and beauty from France with the business of England, and you could find that in Shanghai, in the traditional tea houses in Beijing. They really did not have the cafes in the French sort of manner, but that is really that is you ask many Chinese now, or in institutionally, if you count numbers, the large numbers of cafes came to China only from Starbucks very recently, late 20th century. Same thing came to Korea. Starbucks met with the people and so they thought Starbucks, they were thinking of what they thought of as the previous institutional ways of doing things, which is go from the top, hierarchy. So they went to Samsung, the biggest powerful trading company, not the government. They went to Samsung and they said, wouldn't you like to be connected with Starbucks? And you can use the name Starbucks, but what if you build maybe 100 cafes in Seoul? And the Samsung people said, sure. So they, same thing in Shanghai, basically. It was a big institutional decision. 10 years later, 15 years later, what happened in Seoul and in in Seoul and Shanghai, and especially Seoul is the most dramatic. Less than roughly 1 to 2% of all the cafes, or no, first, and I'm elaborating. I shouldn't. There were more Starbucks in Seoul today, and 10 or 15 years later, than in any other city in the world, more than New York or Paris, Madrid, Rome. Seoul, it's got thousands of cafes. Are they Starbucks? Less than 1% are Starbucks. The Koreans created many different local new kinds of cafes. They would have cats. They would have sheep, so you could drink your coffee and rub the animals. Okay, so they some of them have loud music. They could dance. They could sing. Others are quiet, and you can write or you can study. And many. So they also have this because it's a big city. It's very expensive. It's even more so in Tokyo. Now you live in a little, and then I don't want to go into too many details, but the factors have led to an explosion in these cafes, and they can do collectively all different kinds of things, politically, economically, socially, and some may be beautiful, some may not be at all, etc. So the cafes have been transformed and where and why, but looking at let me contrast at least what I've been told from a number of more detailed, and I'll put forth to you, but people who've said, if you want to do a business, that is, if you want to have let me back up. When I've first come to, say, when I first visited with a new group in Korea, Japan, China, we don't say in the first 5 minutes, do we want to sign a contract and make a business together? No, that's not the first sentence. We say, let's get to know about each other. What do you like in life? What kind of food do you like? What's good? That is, you get to know each other for maybe 3 months or several days. And I will add the same thing. If people fly from New York or Chicago and they go to New Orleans or they go to a small town in Texas, they don't talk about business at the start. They get to know each other first. This is about localism and personal relations. People more used to a personalistic relationship is critical before or in conjunction with, you talked about the ceremony, the beauty, the aesthetics, the personal style. Combining with the business is part of what, and I've been told, this is what you do in a tea house, but not in a cafe. And some will say in the old French way, the only thing you should talk about, the only thing you'd be in the cafe is beautiful. You have a little chat, hello, how are you today, and so forth, but you don't really have a business lunch in a cafe. You'd go to a tea house instead. Okay, so we don't have good data on how much these local cultures hold within these cities or within individual, but in some places they are strict. For instance, I taught at the Sorbonne. I lived in a hotel for a while. I had a little baby room, so I'd go down and I'd work in a cafe. I went once to the most famous cafe for Jean-Paul Sartre, where he was okay. So I went there with my I had a brand new little baby computer. And I sat down in the cafe and I started to work on it. And the waiter came over, sorry, you can't do that here. I said, oh, really? I thought Jean-Paul Sartre wrote when he was in this cafe. Oh, upstairs. So I went upstairs, and there were people they were making pots, they're painting pictures, they're writing books. They have working artists 1 floor up, but not outdoors. Okay, Café de Flore. All right. So the rules of what you do vary, and maybe within. Let me just add. In Hyde Park, They can be racially segregated people in one cafe, one Starbucks, even called a Starbucks. And it used to be that the white people were in the indoor section and the black people were outside all around it, and they would have stuff on the ground, and they were selling things, and they were playing music, etc. So you have two little cultures within the same cafe is even possible. So getting a little information about where and why these vary would be a great topic for a paper, for instance. And if you could find some people who are, we have some comparative data that we could bring in from, say, from Shanghai and Seoul, looking at YouTube people, that would be fantastic. So you could even do a paper together and compare the kinds of data. And so, I mean, you could if you could call, talk to if there's some people who are in the business who might, really know about it. For instance, maybe this is something like a chamber of commerce, or I don't know, or a government official who supervises these things, or the census. It may be that the censuses, especially the Korean census, has now become a fantastically rich, pretty public. That is not everything. Sometimes you have to pay, but you can get data for one cafe in Seoul. You can how many has it been sold? Has the building been sold 3 times in the last 10 years? How much does it pay in taxes? And so an estimate of I don't think that the census does, are you doing business deals? But maybe there are people who are doing a survey. So if we can find someone who's done a survey. But I mean, we have a couple of people. So I'll stop there. I'm simply making the point that the cafe has become one of the most important single examples of consumption, economics, and lifestyle, and aesthetics around the world. And in this example, so many people even in England think, cafes came from Starbucks. Maybe, but did Americans? How about in the 1960s? Did they go to Starbucks? No. Americans did not go. That is, I've heard people say, this is not a cafe society. America's not a cafe society. We work all the time. People would say that. So, in that sense, America has more subcultures, at least. I won't say people have stopped working everywhere in America, but some people have developed a sense of aesthetics and then illustrated by the example of the cats and the sheep and so forth, which you can find in Seoul and you can also find in New York or Chicago. not as much choice. I mean, in Seoul, they've got a lot more cafes and a lot more choice in that sense. And Seoul is half of Korea. Seoul is a huge city, but so is Hee-Sung Chong, in last week's reading on the reading list, Hee-Sung Chong is her name. She did a PhD. Take a look at her PhD, which is on Canvas. It's a brilliant PhD, and she has worked on these kinds of issues, and she has a website now, and she and I have been working on cafes for more than 5 years. Okay. So we got lots of stuff, but we don't have as much as we'd like. Okay. So Habermas, right next to Habermas, gives you the theory of why this is important, and then where and how these things are changing. Okay. Benjamin, we talked about briefly. I'm really leading this into the cross-national patterns of where and why these things are different, cross-nationally, but then within the individual institution. The book, Can Tocqueville Karaoke? Started from a Korean PhD, Korean visiting here, Seoko Kim, and he worked across while he was working on his PhD thesis several years. He also had access to the data from the National Opinion Research Center, NORC. And he took the big idea of Tocqueville. So Tocqueville had many ideas, but the simple idea, which has been stressed by the contemporary late 20th, 21st century people, for instance, have said voting. So Putnam, bowling alone. People are not bowling in groups. They're not being sociable. They're becoming more individualistic, and some of them are not voting. For instance, voting is going down. Church membership is going down. The Lions Club, sports clubs are going down. People are instead doing something else. And Putnam is saying, what you saw, I've shown this before. I want to try to put it on the board. We'll lose it on our videos. The simple idea from Putnam and Tocqueville is civic activities generate different values. They build a sense of trust. Working together, building a fence together builds trust. Is the simple idea of Tocqueville. And that if we have trust, I'll leave it there. So what Seoko Kim did, here's a student, he read the book, Tocqueville. Civil organizations build trust. Here's some data for Korea. He's from Korea. He had a sense, maybe Korea's different. So he analyzed this. So there are more Koreans join organizations than do Americans. The percentage. I mean, there are many Koreans, especially. Number one, I asked the question, we got the answer. Churches. Korean churches are very active, very large. But not just churches. You have especially alumni associations, university alumni clubs, high school clubs, neighborhood clubs, and so forth. All kinds of, so the Koreans are very active, but they don't have more trust. Is Tocqueville wrong in Korea? So he talked to me and I said, well, why don't you have data, something else called the ISSP, which is the international version of the NORC. Why don't you check it out in other countries? Oh, okay. So he looked for, and Tocqueville was right in the sense civic activities generates more trust in England, in Scandinavia, Northern Germany, more or less. Portugal, no. Brazil, no. Russia, no. China, no. Was the same as, that is, so sometimes these civic activities generate trust in the sense that if you ask people, are you, are you a member of a civic activity, and then ask how much, and so trust is often now asked by, how do you trust the national government, regional governments, maybe the police, journalism, military, and your friends, including separate dimensions about local people you know, people you know, and your own family. So you've got, so you can either put all of them together in one big measure of trust, or you can look at them which are more of one of, say, the public, I mean the general set of people, but not including your personal relationships. And so Seok Kim left out the personalistic ones, and he said, maybe the Koreans have more trust if they are close people connected personally, so they have these continuing relations, they build trust. That may be generally true in the world, including Korea. But the Koreans do not build trust for the national government, according to his data. Okay, so where and how this might work, so then we have visitors here from China and from Koreans. Here people. One guy who came was a dean of the School of Marxism, dean of the School of Philosophy of a major university in China. And he said, how can we have a better cultural policy so we can build more trust? Okay? Big policy issue. That is, he became a dean of two schools because he had not quite your background, but he'd had many government jobs, and so he thought in terms of not just academic stuff. So, see one answer. Did the Chinese? Where are the Chinese doing the arts? Karaoke. Could karaoke somehow be joined with cafes, and could that build? If you have okay, so I won't try to go, but basically, step one. Seok Kim's result was it doesn't work in Korea. So we then said, why not? What's different about Korea, and what's different about Northern Europe, Southern Europe, in terms of building trust or in terms of these kinds of relationships? And where and how the arts, where we saw these combinations in cafes versus tea houses. That is, the tea house, the point we made is tea houses add more personal discussions, and that's what maybe that builds trust. Okay, so so basically we had, I think there are 18 people, they're co-authors, and I would ask them questions, and so for instance, Peter Achterberg, who was a Dutchman, he came and he spent 4 months in Chicago, and we took the data from Robert Putnam. So Putnam said bowling alone. So let's look at Putnam's data. Putnam maybe he made a mistake. So we looked at his data, and Putnam's right. If you add things up, how about the arts? There's one table in the arts, and it really doesn't address this question. That is, if you say, which of the following organizations are you a member of? Unions, churches, number 1 and number 2 in the U.S., sports clubs, and so forth. And these are all going down. Right? That is, he doesn't present them sector by sector. But if you look at them, and we got the data, let's look at it, and how about the arts? And the answer was, all these are going down, but the arts are taking off. The arts are a huge exception. In especially the Netherlands, they've gone up 300% in about 15 to 20 years. This is a national sample survey of all the citizens in the Netherlands. In the U.S., about 200%. And one of the ones that's also pretty high was Korea. So where and how have the arts been going up, and how does that transform the workings of trust and relationships among people in ways that the arts can transform from a cafe toward a tea house or something, or a traditional tea house? Okay, so I'm talking around it a little bit, but, let me quit, okay, let me stop there for a second. Let's see if you have any reactions for a bit, and then we can have a little snack. We'll have a 10-minute break for snack, and then we'll have a video. But any reactions to what I've said? So you've been quiet since I've been talking.
I was just, can I just stop?
Sure, go ahead. Okay, yeah, do you need an extension cord?
Probably.
Yeah. There you go.
Maybe I want to add something about the coffee shop in Shanghai and the tea house in Shanghai. I'm totally agree with what you said.
You're a what?
I'm totally agree with what you said that the coffee shop in Shanghai.
I'm missing. Just say it more slowly.
Okay. I'm agree with what you said.
You're agreeing.
Yeah. The coffee is basically for work and business in Shanghai. And I believe I remember that Shanghai is have more than 100 coffee shop in the whole city, which is maybe the most the city with the most coffee shop in the world.
Okay, first, is coffee shop cafe or tea house or something else?
Yeah, it's just like a cafe. Yeah.
Cafe. Okay.
Yeah, and
But not tea house.
yeah, not tea house because from my observation that the tea house, the coffee shop, especially with very big brand like Starbucks, the people they want to go there is because it's represent professional and authority. It's because it's from like the Western labor. The Western. It's a Western brand, so it will generate a scene which is more professional and more advanced. Yeah, so I think it's why the Starbucks is very popular in Shanghai. And it was also saying that, I'm from the rural area and I work 20 years just to want to have a coffee with you in Starbucks. Yeah, but I believe that because the coffee shop, like a cafe, is a very open area. So if you want to talk about some very private things, like some very big business, maybe it's not a good place for those business people to go to the cafe. So the people who talk about business in cafes, mostly about like
Is it okay to have your picture here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I believe that the people who talk about more is about like some small business or like to build a shallow personal trust and in a very professional surrounding and very open surrounding, because what you talk is everybody will see. So someone will say very extraordinary sentence like, "Oh, I'm really rich," or "My project is really great." So this open thing will add the trust to it, and also because the coffee, the coffee's cost is not very low, is a little expensive. At least it represents your up middle class. So it also will, build the personal connection. But I don't think they will talk about more details on the business. And as for the tea house, I think if you are a really rich person and you want to talk about a really big business, many people will go to tea house. It's because it's close.
So you would go to the tea house?
Yes, yes.
And do they have private sections, or the tables further apart? You know,
Yeah.
why is it, I mean, that is, my point one, this is a very good idea, and I haven't heard that you've just stated. And I'm very interested in elaborating it a little more. That is, what you, I won't, let me not interrupt, I'll let you continue. But I'm just adding, please, while you're, and keep talking a little more, it's great. But can you explain, could you add where and why is the tea house a better place for affluent big business discussion?
Oh yeah, I think the first thing is that the tea house, the decoration is more traditional, and it's made like that you are in a very elegant space, and which make you feel yourself is like more. I'm not quite sure more higher class than the coffee shop, than the cafe, and also the elegant atmosphere, which is very similar in the Asian China. It's like you are a rural person. You will see the very beautiful gardens. You will see waitress who dress very beautiful, and like the Asian servant. I don't what's the word, but like that, yeah. Which will make me, oh, you are a very rich and high class person, and also that the tea house, yeah, it will the price of the tea house is like, it's really like if you take a French dishes, yeah, you can compare, like you take off some French dishes with the KFC. Yeah, the Starbucks is that you pay a little higher and you can get a coffee, but in a tea house you may pay a lot of things, but you can also get a very small package of fruit and only cup of tea. And people here, they will not to drink coffee like just to talk about 20 minutes and we will left. That in the traditional Chinese culture, the people should to drink a tea very slowly. So they may have generated a long time to participate, to have a long time to talk. And also in a tea house, it will has a very elegant performance. I mean, it's like a manner to drink a tea. To like some waitress, they will to play how to performance how to drink a tea, and to will help you to pour the tea for you, and you should like follow some manners, follow some like traditional manners, and it will like you look at a very like higher class. It will make the demand of some big business to talk about. And I think the most important thing for the tea house is like the close sphere. It's a close like chamber, and no one will disturb you. And also you can stay there and see very beautiful things, and it will increase the like the chance for the big deal. Yeah, because if you are a customer, someone offer you a very good environment and pay a lot to you, and you also enjoy the beautiful ladies or the beautiful things, and you will have very comfortable, and you will appreciate to that, so it will increase the chance of that, I think.
Okay. Now this is terrific, and it seems very compelling. It fits with the literature of past writings about cafes and Habermas do not include Starbucks in Asia. So what I'm working on with John, and what that is, people with this cover is, where and why do these are both French theories, that is Tocqueville, and the second one is the idea of creativity, general intellectual creativity, comes from Jane Jacobs, Joseph Schumpeter. I don't want to go too much, but basically it's an economic theory and a political theory. And one comes from Tocqueville, one comes from the others, but these are both Western theories. If we take this to Asia now, and we add the Starbucks coming from the West, then that may change the dynamics culturally in ways that you have now elaborated. I've never heard anybody say this. So I'm applauding this because it seems very compelling, very likely, and it connects with the many papers and people who have told me about tea houses and cafes and English coffee shops are three different things. And so this is excellent. Okay. And then that is, when we have a new idea like this, then we'll often try to say, what instead of seeing it as a fixed A or B or C, why do we have more of A or more of B or more of C? That is either more beauty, or let's say more arts, or more business, or more let's say censorship, or sort of political supervision, or variables which may transform the content of these. And so, I'll add as well that in China and in Korea and Japan in the 1920s, there were the beginnings of there were many students who were revolting, and some of them would learn about more of this in Paris, in the West, and they would then come back, and it was politically dangerous for the governments of Japan and Korea and China, and so they said, no more. You can't go to, we will not let you go to Europe. And so many of the Chinese, I've then read, were sent to Japan, which had an emperor and more of a sense of hierarchy. Whereas in Paris and sometimes in London, politically dangerous. So that is, I'm adding some of the history and the sense of hierarchy, which was as much, that is, hierarchy is a variable. It's not going to change it. That is, with this classroom, with one business group, with family, or say with friends, each have a different sense of potential. So if we said, for instance, we had people who are all aged 20 to 25 together, then we have the daughter and her mother and her grandmother together can be different. And the thank you. If we have people who go to a cafe for karaoke, many of them, but this is a variable, many of them come from work together. So they're in an office together, or they're in a hospital together. You have the head of the hospital, or the top doctor, and the assistants to the doctor. And now afterward, I'll ask you, how often would they go to dinner after working in the hospital and then sing karaoke? You ever do that?
Maybe like it depends on the hospitals, of course.
But did you ever do this once or never? Or not just you personally, but would you ever find doctors or doctors and nurses together, I don't know, or other people? Would they go to?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, there were some occasions.
Okay.
Dealings,
And-
yeah.
Okay. And so, or just one quick way in which this is indicated that is often different with, say, some Westerners. Often in a situation like that, if there's a new visitor like me, and the new person is there with, say, with 5 people or 10 people, they each will give me their card, their business card. What's the implication of that? Or why do they show their cards? In a sense, it shows a hierarchy where they rank with. So one is the top doctor, one is a young doctor, one is an intern, one is a resident. And so each of these have a different sense of hierarchy. So in that sense, or I've had a conversation with. I don't want to add. Okay, but you're getting the flavor. That is my analytical point is this is a new interesting idea, but if we can frame this, that is, if we want to have a theory, we don't want to use a proper name. We don't want to say Korea or China or Tokyo. We want to say, what is there about Korea or China or Tokyo that makes it different? And it could be hierarchy. So I'm giving these examples of hierarchy because their hierarchy may be very high, or it may be near zero, in the sense that they're all say people who are age 20 to 25 and they're friends, and they don't use business cards like this because they may be okay. So okay, this is the meaning also, the cultural meaning now of Western, maybe it's not just Western. Maybe people have also frequently contrasted 2 names, Shanghai and Beijing. But Shanghai is more business, Beijing is more political. And so in that sense, it may be one could say, or then we could have, say, big city, say Shanghai and Beijing, versus a small town, a very small town where everybody knows each other. And so it may then be, would that transform the meaning of going to a cafe, a tea house, or a Starbucks, or a non-Starbucks in a rural or a small town area? That would, in a sense, that would be a way of testing your hypothesis, and not saying just Western, but it could be within China. That is, if your idea is very compelling, but we could elaborate it in the form of propositions, and then we can think about a research design. Even if we don't have the data, we can talk as I've just done briefly. Look for a research design, a research site that should permit us to separate out the idea of business from non-business, or personalistic versus hierarchical and input, etc. Okay, so this is a good idea. Why don't we take it? Let's take a 10-minute break and come back.
Radio to you?
No. We have another class. After the break.
Oh, okay.
We
So
don't-
I was
we wanna
like,
keep-
I just dropped one too because that goes separated, so you
Right.
can have, it just takes time to.
Let's do both at once. No,
Okay.
make 2 separate. Let me stop this one as well.